What is up, people? So let me know how that audio is. And while I say what's up to people in the chat, especially we all see militant Manny out there. Calm down, Manny. You need to breathe it out, buddy. Get laid. All right. So let's say what's up to C4. What's up, C4? What's up, Montreal? Yeah, we're definitely going to talk about that video you shared. Soul Survivor, how you doing, sir? What's up, GPS? What's up, No Name? What's up, Sean Hawkins? What's up, Gently's channel? Who else is in my chat? Go down the list. Milton Manny, like I said. Always angry. Always hostile. And let's talk about, there's a Brazilian Goddess. How you doing? And I'm sorry about the dog barking. He's going to do that for a second. Let's see what else is here. What's up, Ali? How you doing, sir? What's up, Fran Torreg, or whatever the hell your name is? Let me see here. Hey, what's up, Pip? How you doing? What's up, Mav64? You got a lot of you guys in the chat. I just need to scroll down more. What's up, they and them? Sorry about that. We're actually having the air show, Miramar Air Show, so you guys are going to probably hear jets in the background as well. All right, so let me go ahead and get this panel up. Let me go ahead and get the topic started. So it was going to be open and mainly about gravity. And Montreal and in the chat, we all know Montreal, he shared a link with me, and it was basically on stratoballoons and their capabilities, mainly in the idea of satellites. I definitely want to talk about it because they do use them on a regular basis. Matter of fact, the solar radiation management geoengineering project that I've been talking about, ScopeX, they're actually using stratoballoons for the preliminary studies to take that to Congress and have that pass. So it's definitely very, very interesting. I'm going to get this meetup set up so I can get you in here. All right, here you go. All right. Hey, Manny, why don't you calm down a little bit? Let me go ahead and clear this. And if the jets are that bad, let me know, because I can turn down the gate a little bit. Let me see. Okay, so I'm just getting a link to the chat. Sorry about that. I'll share it in with you peoples. Yeah, hey Manny, I'm not a flat earther anymore. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, so like I was saying, before I got sidetracked by Manny, oops, that's fucking huge. Hang on one second. Make it a little smaller, put it back, and then make it the correct one. All right, so like I said, I wanted the original topic that I want to talk about is gravity. Last time, Seek and Find, True or Plain Truth, and I think somebody else was on here. I think Chris Berry was on here, and giving us their rendition of what they believe it to be, because it can't be gravity. It just can't. I got a jet coming, so hang on one second while I get Montreal in here.
Hey, very good, Sean. How's it going?
Going good, going good. Good topic to bring up. In a sense, remember I was saying the original topic I wanted to do was gravity, with the whole talk that me, Seek and Find, and the others that were on the panel were having. Hang on.
Holy F-16, Batman.
So everything you guys are gonna hear the whole damn air show. Believe it or not, my window is actually closed. Interesting video on Discord. Okay, I'll check that out, Mav. All right, so now that we have some silence before the jets come back, the video you shared, I'll play. I have no problem playing that, especially because I already uploaded it. Pull that up.
Thanks, Sean. I didn't mean to steal the thunder of the gravity, because that's one of my favorite topics, but I promised GPS for a while now, so I want to keep my word.
It has something to do with it.
Yeah.
We talked on time dilation. You guys, that's just what, pointed me into, like, to what you guys were talking about. Man, that jet is fucking loud. What's up, Ali B? How you doing, sir?
What's up, Ali?
Hi, how you doing? I'll be popping in and out, Sean. How you doing, Montreal? You convinced me. I'll be popping out in and out. Listen,
good stuff.
I'm just now. So,
all right,
good stuff. You okay? All good?
Yep.
Yep, good stuff. All right, I'll mute my phone now.
Okay. The reason it was a great link to share. Let me trying to find it so I can play it. I gotta pause it. Hang on one second. Is because
I'd rather have a science balloon than.
We've always heard rumors and this and that about how flat earthers will say that satellites are fake. What do they use? Balloons. Problem is they were way ahead of technology, I guess you would say, when I started hearing about these balloons. But here's the reality now. They use them as alternative satellites on a regular basis. Here's why it doesn't solve the our satellite's real issue. And this is kind of what I was talking about in Montreal with the ups and the downs of it. One sec. Damn it, motherfucker's loud. Okay, so here's the problem with them. Now, I wanted to show. I'm just gonna kind of skip to the end of it real quick, but then I'm gonna, because I just want to show these numbers. Where is it? Kind of hard to find it. And I also want to make a comparison in what we've seen before. Nonetheless, where is it? If I can't find it, I'll just say it. All right, there it is. Perfect. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and share this right off the bat, because this is the one of the main issues with these different ideas and how they work. All right. So the main thing I wanted to talk about right away when it comes to this Montreal was the price to be able to use these. Why did I share that window? Let's actually look, huh? All right. What is it? I think it is. Huh. Why aren't you working? Oh, I know. I did it right the first time. All right. Get this to pop back up. My bad. Thing being a pain in the ass. See if that'll work. All right, now you guys can see it. Perfect. All right, hang on, let the jet go by. Hang on 1 second. I have an idea.
That's a pretty good comparison there, Sean.
Sorry about that, guys. I had to do something about that. That was freaking insane. Okay, so got the chat up, got this up. So let me make it so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, so here's the main kicker with these things. Why didn't you work? I'll do it this way then. Fine. All right, so what you guys are seeing is the price to launch 4 of the GOES-R satellites. It says it costs $11 billion. Now, in comparison, which is this kind of disingenuous, only showing that it costs $300,000 to launch one set strata balloon. Here's the problem. Yes, these things are able to stay up for 90 days. Yes, they're able to pose as satellites and do a lot of the things satellites are doing for us, and along with cell signals. But here's the drawback: there's no room. You're not going to get a big area like these satellites can do already. Let me go ahead and play the video. Oh, you guys won't be able to hear it unless I do. All right, you guys are here. Hang on, I'm gonna play that video now so you guys can hear it.
I'd rather have a science balloon than a science satellite. With a balloon, there's no need for rockets. To get a satellite to hover over the same spot on Earth, geostationary orbit, you have to be 36,000 kilometers away, too far to use some sensors, like radar. A balloon can sit 1,000 times closer, in the stratosphere, 30 to 40 kilometers above the Earth, and still be above 99% of the atmosphere with clear views of the stars or wide panoramas of Earth. You can bring down a balloon, tinker with onboard scientific equipment, and then launch again. Satellites, not so much. Cost is also a factor. NOAA's 4 new geostationary weather satellites are estimated to cost $11 billion, whereas a balloon flight might cost just a few $100,000. NASA's been flying balloons for a long time, but without any steering capabilities, they drift in the wind across continents. Now, private industry is getting in the balloon game, with new technologies that are enabling balloons to hover over one spot. These balloons rise and fall in the stratosphere, catching countervailing breezes that allow them to stay roughly in the same place. What can a balloon with a scientific payload do? It can look down at the Earth, checking on storms or animal migrations. It can look out into space, peering at the surface of the sun or collecting cosmic rays. It can even do things in the stratosphere, like studying how ice crystals could reflect sunlight and cool the planet. How do you keep a balloon stable enough to use a telescope? Gyroscopes can help keep a platform pointed at its target, even as it sits in a twisting gondola. But this isn't an ad for scientific balloons. There are a few caveats. For example, while satellites last for years, the longest balloon flights have been a few months. And what goes up needs to come down, so most balloons come with parachutes that can bring their payloads down gently.
And that right there was the part I really wanted to talk about. You remember, when was it? I think it was a couple years ago at least. And where was it? Some place in, I think it was Africa or something, or South America, one of the two. There were reports that a satellite had deorbited, I guess you would call it. I don't know, I forget what you call it. But they had said that it fell out of orbit. When I saw that article, it looked more to me like what we were just looking at with the stratoballoons. If I can find it real quick. You there, Montreal? I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Here, Sean.
Okay. I'm trying to find something right now, so I kind of wanted to, if you had any questions so far. I know I didn't really touch into anything, but I wanted to get to.
No, it's good. The only thing I'm trying to show here is that there's an alternative to satellites, and that the height where they say that satellites are now, they should be fried. It's in the upper exosphere, and it gets like to 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit.
But
so, I just looked into it for GPS. I'm not an expert on this. I'm just telling you guys what I found.
Yeah, I don't know very much about that area, but the one thing I kind of starting to understand, because I've kind of started looking into it as well, is that even if it was, I don't think it's 3,000, but even if it was, it's not the same 3,000 as if your oven was 3,000 degrees. I know that. Like it's different. It doesn't. What's it called?
Yeah, that's what they tell us, because there's not enough molecules in the air. Blah blah blah. But radiation heat. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but we can verify that.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is the heat. See what the round earthers say, and the prevailing thing is that there's not enough atmosphere up there. There's not enough molecules for the radiation to affect it. But my point is, the radiation hits directly on the satellite. It has nothing to do with the air molecules. Just like it hits Earth, just like it hits the space station, same way.
But wouldn't our atmosphere absorb more of it? Like have something to bond to, I guess?
No, heat transfers in light radiation from the sun.
Okay.
So whatever it hits, it makes the molecules speed up and heat up.
But I think it slows it down because don't we doesn't it? I mean, the majority of the sun's radiation get deflected by the electromagnetic field. I'm not sure. I vaguely
No, no, I
thinking
don't
that.
think so. No, it goes no.
Not blocks it, but I mean, it takes up the most chunk of it. That's what I would assume, though. Like I said, I know very little about it. Only what I've read here and there, and it all hasn't sunk in yet. So I'm just kind of giving you an idea, or my best guess idea that I can give you for it.
Same with me, Sean. I'm not claiming to be an expert.
Hmm?
It's just what I found so far, and it's pretty simple. The heat travels in a vacuum. When it hits an object, it excites the molecules on the object, and it heats it up.
Okay, but I got one something crazy for you. So, as we rise in our troposphere, it gets colder. You know, basically, the higher up you get, where we live, where weather is, it gets colder. But once you get to the stratosphere, it does the opposite. From the lowest part of the stratosphere, where it's one temperature, it actually gets hotter as you go up in the stratosphere, and then it changes throughout the other bands. It's insane. I don't even know. I have zero clue why. I'm not even making that up as a point. I'm just saying it's crazy.
No, you're right. It starts at the troposphere, then we go to the stratosphere, then we go to the mesosphere, then the thermosphere. That's where the heat starts. And then we go to the exosphere where it's like ridiculously hot.
Is it?
Oh yeah, we're talking molten metal barbecue. We're talking
molten metal and no molten metal up there, man.
That's my whole point, Sean.
Is that I gotta look at that. That don't make no sense. Why? I don't even know if they would compare it to molten metal in space.
Sean, we're talking about 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. There's few things that could withstand that heat. Certainly not those satellites.
But did they
It'd be barbecued.
That's why I was asking if they say in Fahrenheit, because it's. I know the way it works is completely different. What's up, they and them?
Hey, folks.
Kind of brainstorming on how this works, because like I said, I didn't really know much, but just the basics of it.
I don't know much either, but I'd like to ask, was it Montreal that was speaking?
Yes.
Montreal, do you think that just because there are molecules traveling around at 2,000 plus degrees, that when they hit another molecule off something like a satellite, that means that satellite will raise to 2,000 or 3,000 degrees once one molecule hits it?
Has nothing to do with the molecules. It has to do with the light of the sun transferring heat through radiation. Has nothing to do with molecules in the air. It has to do with the molecules that it excites when it hits the satellites, the metal on the satellites itself.
Barney says a ton of ice has more heat contents than a gram of burning coal. A gram of burning coal has a higher temperature than a ton of ice. Ah, I see. There's a difference between heat content and temperature. That makes sense, Montreal. Do you have your?
I don't know what he's trying to say there.
Nope. I'm on mobile, so.
Okay, I was hearing an echo. Maybe I wonder if it's me. Nope, not here anymore.
Aaron, the answer is 24. Sorry, Sean.
I was going to respond to the comment just above Lodi, where Graham or Price or whatever his name is. Like, you guys understand that? Like, I guarantee none of you understood this back in high school, grade school, whatever. Like, You gotta remember, you may retain some things, but you don't retain everything. So just calling someone stupid or saying they don't have any education if they don't know these topics that's ridiculous. I didn't know any of this shit. I guarantee I'm smarter than a lot of you guys that are sitting in there talking shit for no reason, not speaking up on the panel.
I'd like to give a shout out to Aaron. I heard him on your show the other couple of times, and he's pretty intelligent, even though you guys make fun of him.
He trolls way too hard. Well, the thing is if he's like within 0 to 5 beers, he's tolerable. But after he hits that 6 through 9 beers, he becomes just, it's impossible. I had to kick him off it last night. I was like, holy crap. And he knows it because that's why he keeps coming back.
Yeah, he's fun to listen to.
Depends on whose panel. He's not fun to listen to here. I think okay. So Alk was asking. Oh, okay. He was telling me that there were different ways. Classified research says Barney says heat transfers from objects in higher temperature to objects of lower temperature. But you cannot transfer more heat than is contained. I see. Oh, okay. I get it.
So, Barney, can I ask you, am I wrong in what I'm saying about when the light leaves the sun in the form of radiation and hits the satellite, it would not melt it like I'm saying?
I keep forgetting Barney may be at work. I was going to say, God damn it, hang on. Fix my mic, guys. Sorry. I was going to say it sounds like a silent stream. And I was going to tell Barney to get on the panel, but I think he may be at work. What's up, Carlos? How you doing, sir?
What's up, party people?
Hey, Carlos.
Hey, Carlos, did you come up with that upload yet?
Huh?
Did you do that upload yet with the whole shadow and all that stuff?
Not yet, man. I was doing some side work. I'm trying to start a company, and while I work full time, so I've been doing some work after I get off my regular job. So this weekend it would be finished and uploaded. So
Step 1. What's more important than flat Earth, Carlos? And number 2, I have a real job too, Hannah. No worries. I just wanted to find out. I was going to actually say, so promote it. I realized that was one of those experiments I wish I would have done years ago. I wish flat earthers would have done years ago.
yeah, yes, sir.
It's Jose's in the house over here. What's up, Jose?
Oh yeah.
I am Nathan Thompson, and I'm coming to recite pi, and I know how to count till 12.
Did you memorize it?
Yes, I memorized pi. I know how to count till 12. I know the days of the week and the months of till July, from January to July. So I got you, bro. I got you.
I want to see you bounce a golf ball with a freaking sledgehammer now.
Wrong, Nathan.
He's shirtless.
That's ass to mouth. I mean, hand-eye coordination, Nathan. You're talking about.
Hello.
Which one is Jose talking about then?
Crazy nutter, like rustic man type dude. Yeah,
I think you're getting him mixed up.
No, I'm not. This dude, he's the crazy one. He's the one.
Look, there's Nathan Roberts, there's Nathan Thompson,
Thompson,
and there's Nathan Oakley.
Yeah.
So Nathan, huh?
I was gonna say Thompson is the one that bounces the stupid shit on the golf ball with the stick, because I don't even know why he does it. And then Then there's Nathan, crazy Nathan who's going to psycho and kill people one day. But then you have this Nathan that he's pretending to be.
Yeah, I'm just Nathan. Yeah, just Nathan.
Like, seriously, he's a nutter. Like, he's not there. Like, he rambles a lot. He kind of just yells at the screen rather than, have a real.
I don't know what you guys are talking about now. You lost me.
You have to listen when I am speaking.
Oh, that idiot. Okay.
Thank you. 3.14765432 Thank you.
I've only heard him twice.
You.
That was amazing. He said the whole thing pi. He said the whole thing pi, and then someone said, "Do you know how to use pi? How they use pi?" And he had no clue. Hang on 1 second. I got my boy right here.
So, what was the issue with the heat transfer with the thermosphere? Why was that being brought up?
Sorry.
Montreal asked me a question that I didn't catch.
Going to
Hi, Barney.
Car. Let's see.
Hi, Montreal.
It's in the door. Take $5.
I was just wondering what I said about the heat radiation coming from the sun hitting the satellite.
Yeah.
Was I wrong about that?
He was saying it was hot.
It's hot. Yes, it's
temperature.
hot.
Well, temperature. What they got? Go ahead. I'm trying to understand it too.
Well, that's why they got a bunch of foil on it, supposed to reflect a lot of that radiation.
Yes.
Enough to reflect heat of 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes.
And more.
Yes, because you're not reflecting heat. You're reflecting light.
Right.
And
remember the heat that there's forward-looking infrared, there's near infrared, then there's other spectrums of radiation. Some are visible, some are not. So,
for light to transfer heat, it needs to get absorbed.
correct.
If it gets reflected, it didn't get absorbed. If you wrap your thing in cellophane, you will not be able to heat it by infrared radiation. Not cellophane, but anything that's reflective.
Like you couldn't,
it's not cellophane.
you
foil.
couldn't use a super bright light to heat up foil. It needs to be a different source, right? Like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. No, you can heat it
So
up.
you're saying the foil? Sorry, go ahead, Barney.
You can heat
so you're
it up.
saying the foil they have on it is sufficient enough to reflect that amount of heat? Because from what I found, that it's really not possible to reflect that much.
It doesn't matter how much heat. It doesn't matter how much light you're reflecting, as long as you're reflecting all of it. Right? A mirror reflects all light.
Nothing can absorb it. Nothing does absorb it, better yet.
Right? Well, I don't think you're ever going to reach 100% efficiency.
You can never reach 100% efficiency. That's why you have radiators.
Correct. So, what it is foil is very light and very effective on reflecting some radiation and light. That's why it's used, because you're not going to use what's it called, insulation that you would hear when you have air and stuff, because you're dealing with a near vacuum. So you already have that separation because you don't have a medium to transfer the heat through that. Now you still have to deal with some radiation, of course, of that heat. But there's three different ways of transferring the heat. I can't remember. One of them is radiation, convection, and what's the other one?
And conduction, yes.
And conduction. Yeah. So because you don't have air over there, you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, foil is light and is very effective on that. There's other methods.
Precisely.
I'll take your guys' word for it for now. I'm going to research it more. I find it hard to believe that anything could withstand that much direct radiation on it, but I'll do more research on that.
So it depends on how you transfer the heat. If you were transferring it with a lot of high energy particles, which is the common way to transfer heat here, right? Because we have air that we can heat up, and when you use, let's say, a hair dryer, you heat up the air, and the rapid movement of those particles hits particles in your skin, in your hair, and makes them jiggle, and that's heat. But for
You're
light
talking
to
about
make,
convention now, yes.
yeah, but for light to make something jiggle, to transfer that momentum, that kinetic energy into the particles, it needs to get absorbed. If you take a light reflective surface, the light gets reflected. That's why, like even here on Earth, you can notice the effect by going out barefoot on a summer day and step on the asphalt and step on the white line, right? The road lines that have been painted white. Since white reflects a lot of light, it'll be significantly colder than the black tar of the asphalt, right? Because it's black and it absorbs light. That's literally what black means.
Yeah, damn it, people! Don't you guys ever heard the analogy? Black shirt, white shirt. You know, God, go back to elementary school, people. I'm just kidding.
And
Yeah, I think everybody knows that. Yeah.
Silvery surfaces which are directly reflective, right, which don't absorb and remit light as white does, are even more effective at it. And you just use heat shielding, radiation shielding around the things that you need to protect from heat. And that's why all of those things are wrapped in that gold foil, because it's really good at reflecting infrared light.
Okay, Barney, thanks for the answer. I'll do more research on it. Then there's the cost issue. How about the cost issue?
What about the what issue?
That's an easy one because remember, those strata balloons last right now. We'll say 90 days.
Oh, were you guys talking about satellites before I got on here?
Yeah. We were talking about satellites. Oh, okay, I'll give you a rough draft. Roll through it. He had brought up him in a conversation him GPS in the chat was having about strata balloons and the fact that you're used to for as simulation satellites is what I call them. Basically satellites, and it got to the point where Montreal had made a comment of how are they up there with the temperatures being the way they are, which led us into the conversation we're having now.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, the cost. What's the issue you have with the cost, Montreal?
It's significantly cheaper to maintain satellite balloons.
Oh, but it's not, my friend. So
but hang on.
I'm gonna show. Let me get. I'll bring that thing back up. The clip that shared in that video. Well, just so you know, Carlos, we were looking at the numbers that they were showing was 11 billion for 4 of the GOES satellites versus one strata balloon being 300,000.
Yeah,
I'm bringing it up.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing, Montero, that you have to think about what type of satellite and what the purpose is. Now, if you think about, let's say, a geosynchronous orbit satellite, that basically technically has a coverage of a little bit less than 50% of one side of the Earth. So you could have coverage from that satellite anywhere in one half of the globe for the most part. And if you were to have a fleet of satelloons to cover the same amount of real estate or mile square footage or whatever, you would have to have hundreds upon hundreds to thousands of balloons
and replenish them every few days.
Exactly. So then you have to have people who are it's going to have to monitor them. Yeah, they're going to have to monitor them, then be able to pick them up when they're going to come off orbit. You know,
they have their program. They can program them to have a quote unquote mission.
What?
Carlos, did you see the video?
You can. So the strata balloons that they use, they're now able to. They're able to keep them in certain locations. They're able to avoid the jet stream basically. And they have a 90-day lifespan.
Yeah, they use the streams of jet streams of different directions in order to position themselves. Depending on.
Nope, they no longer do that. So
Oh,
when
they
they
know?
launch,
Okay.
no, yeah. It's so imagine your return feature on the drone. It has
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, flight path. It has a flight path program basically. So that's one
Okay.
way that they are able to do it, and then they also control it from the ground.
Right. Well, what I'm doing is comparing the how you would try to emulate the coverage of a geosynchronous satellite
Okay, yeah,
with balloons,
can't.
and it's like, think about it. If you have a balloon at about what, let's say 300 no, 30,000 feet up, if you're right up under it, then of course you're gonna have to aim your parabolic antenna 90 degrees up, and then as you start going away from it, if you use trigonometry, you realize the angle is going to have to be, lower and lower to the point where you're not going to have any line of sight with that balloon. So then that's why you have to have a bunch of cells or balloons, just like with phone towers. You have cells that overlap. Same thing with balloons, and you have to have that all over the United States, Central America, South America, to be able to emulate geosynchronous, satellite.
I'm about to
And
bring up my little paint scheme so I can show them what we're talking about. I know
So
exactly what you're saying too. Yeah.
yeah, and the problem is that not only can you verify by the azimuth and elevation of where you point the parabolic dishes to those satellites, but yeah, that's one way to really verify that. Because if it was balloons, then you will have to be pointing those dishes all over the place as you move around the United States. But if you notice, most dishes most dishes on the southern hemisphere point to the north, and vice versa. In the northern hemisphere, they point to the south. And then any dishes closer to the equator, they start pointing straight up almost. Do a search on Google Images of satellite dishes in the equator, and you see they almost point almost 90 degrees up. And then do a search of dishes in let's say Alaska, they're about 15 degrees or so. So that that can help you verify that.
I hear you, bro. Do a search on Google balloons, and you're gonna see that technology is far superior than what you think, Carlos.
Yeah, but
I just explained you how it wouldn't work, and I have done the research. I've seen the Google project.
So what Carlos is saying is right. He's 100% correct in it. There, right now, I'd say Montreal, honest, because I couldn't tell you exactly, but I'd say they're just now being confident in their strata balloons and what they can do now. We're to the point now where they're... Say again?
Can I ask what the motivation for this conversation is? Like, what is the charge here?
You gotta ask Montreal. It was between him and GPS in the chat.
Yeah, the charge is that there's no such thing as satellites orbiting Earth because it's impossible on a flat Earth. I think that's what the charge is.
No, that's not the charge.
Wait. So in the same way that we can use, I put this in the live chat already, but in the same way that you can use 3 or 4 satellites to pinpoint the location of your receiver, you can also use 3 or 4 receivers to pinpoint the location of an individual satellite. And since you can arbitrarily pick your receiver points on Earth, that literally cannot be faked. So you can triangulate the position of that satellite in space and know literally how far it is and what its position is. So that argument is kind of, if that's the argument, it's kind of rubbish. We know those satellites are up in space.
Yeah, exactly. And here's exactly why. Montreal, you see the 3 circles, 3 different colors?
Yep.
Okay, well, the blue one would be Earth. And these are not to scale, so don't attack. The yellow one is what a satellite is able to see. And the red one would be a strata balloon. Now, the question would be, how many strata balloons would it take to have the same coverage as a regular satellite?
Yeah, that's the scale.
You guys are behind the curve. Read what I just pasted on the YouTube chat.
I'm on my phone. I can't read. Can you read it?
Read it yourself,
Tell us
Montreal.
that.
Let's hear it.
Present your case.
Sure. Telesat LEO program continues to build a world-class supplier team. Ottawa, Canada, and Mountain View, California, USA, January 31st, 2019. Telesat and Loon, a subsidiary of Google's parent company Alphabet, are pleased to announce they have entered into the agreement under which Loon will deliver network operating system design that Telesat can use to support its global low Earth orbit satellite constellation. The design will adapt and expand on Loon's cloud-based spatial software designed to platform that Loon uses today to deliver mobile data services over its fleet of stratospheric balloons. I believe that's a boom right there, right?
I can show you. Oh, hang on.
Why is that a boom? Why is that a boom?
Did you not understand what I just read to you?
Yes.
Yes. What, I want you to elaborate on how is that a boom? How is that a flat smack?
That's a boom because there's an alternative. There's an alternative to satellites in space. This is what I'm trying to tell you.
There is. The balloons are an alternative to satellites in space.
No, yeah, he said in space too, but not balloons in space, just satellites in space. And they did it. They've done it They do it a lot. They did it in China during the Olympics. They would help with a lot of phone services, but the same problem happens, Montreal. The coverage is not worth the money.
Ain't nobody here saying that there are no balloons. Right? There are balloons.
So let me ask this: is your claim that they don't have to have actual satellites in space? They can just have balloons instead to replace all the satellites? Is that what you're saying, Montreal?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That eventually they're probably going to do that. There's no need to go into space anymore.
So you're saying that there are satellites then in space?
No, I don't believe there's satellites in space. I don't believe there's a space, but that's a different story. I'm trying to go by your guys' way of thinking.
Right. Well, let me ask you this: how does DirecTV, Dish Network, HughesNet work, which are TV and internet, satellite TV and internet providers? How do they work throughout all the United States and Central America and South America?
With balloons.
Really?
With satellite balloons, my friend. That's how they work.
That's how they work. So,
can I ask Montreal a question after you're finished?
Yeah, I was going to say, oh, Lord, I just went over how that wouldn't work. But anyway, yeah, go ahead.
All right, Montreal, I come from the UK, okay? And in Northern Ireland, there is only one military airbase. The other three major airports are just for domestic flights. So where are all these balloons being raised from? Because in Northern Ireland, GPS works 100% of the time, and I've been at the military airbase quite a few times, and I've never seen all these balloons being raised and lowered.
Well, I know there hasn't been that many, but I don't think have you seen one? Just to ask.
Yes, I have seen some. I have seen weather balloons being sent up.
I don't know if you would consider them the same thing. Would you? No, because a weather balloon looks more like a balloon, like the what do you call it?
Well, I'm giving Montreal the biggest variation in what these things can look like.
Yeah. I'm not talking against you. I was just asking.
Yeah.
Because one of the the Scope X project that I keep talking about with the geoengineering, there was actually a university in the UK that tried to do it years ago, but got caught by some type of regulation.
I have one question for Montreal.
But wait, before you ask me, I'm going to give him an answer. The answer is undersea cables. We're getting everything. Everything you think comes from satellites is coming from undersea cables.
Okay, Monterrey, I'm sorry, but you're really just repeating something you heard somebody else say. And I can say that because I actually work on the cable TV and broadband industry and satellite TV and satellite internet industry. And the question I have for you is, if we have let's say a fleet of hundreds of satellites over the United States that are providing direct TV or satellite internet and GPS or whatever. Well, let's just stick with geo.
Did I really just do that? God damn it. 1 second, people. I just fucking joined my own hangout. Hang on. There it is. I'm back.
If there was a fleet of balloons all over the United States, wouldn't those dishes be pointing in different orientations according to where the balloons are?
Again, they just there's no way in Montreal for them to have the same coverage. The price thing.
No, let him answer. Let him answer the question.
Okay.
That's a good question, Carlos. I have no idea why they're pointed there. Maybe that's where the main balloon is. Like I said, I'm not an expert on this.
Obviously,
all I'm telling you is the funny things that I found doing simple research on this project, which I promised GPS. I'm not claiming I'm an expert. I'm just showing you alternatives to satellites.
I know, but you said
the issue of time dilation. I don't believe in time, so there's no such thing as time dilation. That's all I want to say. I don't want to keep going on, and I'm not an expert on this.
I respect you saying you're not an expert, whatever. But earlier you read something and you said "boom," as if like that was proof of the satellites don't need to be in space. And now you told me that you've done very simple research, and then you told me you're not an expert. And I just want you to do more research on how parabolic dishes work. Just so you have a better understanding, because at this point what you've said is stuff that I've heard from other flat earthers like Jeranism and Globebusters, and yeah, at first glance it sounds like feasible stuff, but just under investigation and research you realize they don't hold any water.
Could I ask a question here to Carlos, our resident satellite expert? Would that be okay, Carlos, Pagan? If I have a question for you, or the panel maybe.
Attention, just smacking the shit out of the keyboard. Go ahead, Alibi. Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah, thanks. Right. What's the upload download capabilities of these communication satellites, Carlos, or any of the other experts on the panel, please?
I'm not an expert.
I didn't say you were, Sean. But
I just wanted to state that.
I don't misunderstand you, mate. I won't accuse you. Sorry, Barney. On you go.
I said that I wouldn't know.
Carlos? No, I think he chose to ignore me or something, probably. But okay. But it's still quite an interesting question, because how much information can it actually receive and transmit?
Sorry, I just came back. I was gone.
All right, Carlos, good one. What's the download upload capabilities of these communication satellites? I believe in satellites, by the way. I'd just like to know.
It depends. These days is a lot faster. They can do 10 megs. Some do 5. You have a bandwidth, and then you have to kind of I
know, but how many customers could one satellite, if it's got a download or a download and upload or download capabilities of 5 megs, how many people could you share that amongst if it's 5 megabits?
Well, really, you have of course a wider bandwidth from the satellite to the head end that is communicating to the internet. Now, what you do is that you connect multiple users, and then you're gonna have to throttle how much each user can use from that.
Right, so you divide. That's what I'm saying.
times,
But 5 megabytes is not very fast.
Well, 5 megabytes is not, but
5 megabytes is
Viasat 1, whose specs I'm looking at now, has 140 gigabits per second.
Right, and how many people? Right, wait a minute. So that's 140 gigabits. So, so as a customer, I would expect 10 what's that? 10 megabytes per second. So how many people, customers, would that? About 1,000, 200,000 people?
That's the speed that
I have a question to Carlos. Carlos, it's your profession. Isn't it how it works that the satellite sends the signals, and then all we're really doing is getting it from the antennas or towers that you were talking about? Because I was always told when it comes down to, like, you know, how they wanted to use GPS and how they use it with, you know, navigating, and the idea is that the ping takes too long to space compared to probably an antenna around us would be faster for us.
Oh yeah, no. Some systems they used to use your dial-up to send a request of the content you wanted, like a website. You say, I want you to load up Facebook, and then it would get faster through the request would get faster through dial-up to the server, because even though it's dial-up, you're only sending a few lines of code to request, and then it would talk to the satellite dish, and then it will receive the information.
Yeah, but it still has to broadcast. It still has to broadcast that information like a video, so it has to have the capabilities.
That's one kind of communication with satellite. Nowadays, they actually communicate back and forward directly with the satellites.
Yeah, I know, but that right. Say, for example, when I click on a video, right, there's a certain amount of speed that I require for that video to play without buffering, right? And so that's a certain amount of megabytes per second or whatever, right? And that information, what you call it, load, well, you're echoing, Carlos, that load will be projected onto the satellite, because the satellite's still got to pass that information back on. It receives, upload, download.
I don't think it receives your control. Like when you click the button, I don't think you're sending. I think
it has to receive the request, otherwise
yes.
it wouldn't respond. It has to. It has to
receive. Sean, it is being transmitted from your dish to the satellite. It is. In some cases, they will use dial-up to send the request and then wait to receive from the satellite, because they have more bandwidth there. It's just a longer ping. But yeah. Nowadays, you send a request through there, it makes it to the dish, to the satellite, and then it sends the information back.
Okay, I see.
So it comes to a ground base, right? The request comes to a ground. You send the request.
It doesn't come to ground base.
To the satellite. So the satellite does it. So you send and receive information directly from the satellite.
Oh yeah, the satellite does communicate with that ground station to be able to connect to the internet. Yeah.
Right, everybody then, right?
Yeah, I was just talking about a specific system where the user send a request through a landline dial-up, and then the ground station would send the information to the satellite, and the satellite back to the dish.
Can I ask a question here? Because this is, I'll admit, I'm the most stupid person on this panel, right? I'm an idiot in the chat most of the time.
That's very honest of you to admit. You know, we respect honesty on this panel.
Who's on this panel right now? I don't know if verify that or not.
Aren't we all?
I'm gonna say no. You're not the dumbest here. That's it. That's all I'm saying, though.
Right. Well,
that's begging a question. A big question.
Either way, I'm to admit that there are far more educated people, whether that's formally or self-taught, than me. Okay. But first of all, as far as I understand it, not everybody uses satellite for internet connection and everything else. A lot of this is handled with the undersea cables.
I think a lot of people,
Correct.
a lot less people use alternative.
Yeah, so doesn't that automatically take a huge load off what I understand Abby B as trying to get at?
Yeah, no, it's only a few people. If you live in a very remote area, if you only way that you to get internet service is either through a cellular network if the towers are close enough, or satellite internet.
I just brainstormed the hell out of
Why
this
would
one.
you need
This is why those strata balloons, aka alternative satellite, would be used. There's a disaster. An island or some country doesn't have access to an ocean or can't get the fuck out. You have a satellite image from wherever the fuck you are to assess the situation. That's one way they use the strata balloons as a satellite. But satellite stays up for years. The cost analysis, it's actually a lot cheaper to send a satellite into space than a strata balloon.
Yep, it would be a lot more expensive to have a fleet of balloons to have the same coverage of a geosynchronous satellite. Now, there are benefits to have balloons doing that because you can service them, you can upgrade them. So, and you can, if you only have a small island coverage with that, you don't have to send a whole satellite just for one little island. You just deploy a few balloons for that area. So, there are the cons and pros.
Right, Carlos, area-wise, then, what area could a balloon satellite cover?
It depends on its elevation, but out there to say that it would be, let's see,
they average about 70,000 to 100,000.
So just a quick back of the envelope calculation.
Yeah.
That one satellite can maintain almost 30,000 concurrent connections at 5 megabits per second.
Brilliant. And there's 350 million people in America.
Yes, and all of those people individually use satellite for their broadband.
You guys seem to go on about these satellite supplies all the communications when even that
nobody claims that satellites provide all the communication. What a moronic comment.
Right, but you make a big deal about when flat earthers say 95% of communications are under submarine cables.
Yes, it is for fiber optic on the sub.
Dude, listen, I've been around here for fucking years. Sorry, Sean. I've been around here for years, and ballers used to deny that, right? And this is quite funny
what?
How exactly that 95% of cables. Everybody said, all communications and satellites. You use satellite communication for your telephone. It was to do with that.
It's the same reason. It's the same reason why some ballers say that. Oh my gosh!
But you guys denied it, though, right? And this is the thing that what makes me laugh. Now, I pointed out about how many megabits per second, and Barney, quite rightly, a measly 31 satellite. How many satellites would it take to to service the whole world, man? It's ridiculous, right? So the majority of satellite information, it comes from ground-based stations. Landing stations is where the information comes from, and it gets sent to satellite stations, satellite dish stations, which then get broadcasted out to the public or fed by fiber optics and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So satellites, you guys reckon. That's it. That's the point. The story changes.
No, what the
Who changed the story?
hang on.
Well,
He's
you lot
claiming.
did your little communicator
We
of
we's
all
lot.
Earth
Am
believers.
I part of?
Yeah,
Am I part of use lot?
Yeah, sorry, mate. If you, my father said, well, my granny told me, if you're in amongst the claws, you'll get shot.
Ali, I'm a satellite installer technician. I know what the crap I'm talking about. I'm telling you that
I couldn't care. Well, that's like, but listen, you've never
What?
even worked on satellites. So
What?
it's like someone that washes cars telling me that they're a mechanic. That's all you are. You're in comparison to someone that's worked on satellites and knows what satellites. You're a guy who washes cars, mate. Sorry. That's
What?
all. You've obviously got higher. He's never worked on a satellite. He installs fucking satellite dishes, man. And he's trying to compare that to someone that worked on satellites so that he knows using that as a reference to that he's a satellite.
And what are your qualifications?
Like
Ali,
Ali, what are your qualifications?
Yeah, he didn't say he was an expert. He did not say he was a satellite expert.
Let me finish then. It's like, to me, it's like someone washes cars tell me that they're a mechanic.
Okay.
No,
He
that's,
just
that's
said,
a moronic.
you tried to justify, you said, hey, by the way, I install satellites and I'm well capable of doing that.
Ali,
what are your qualifications in this?
Hang on, Barney.
I've a lot about radio wave propagation.
Ali, hang on.
So
a mechanic doesn't build cars, doesn't manufacture them, but guess what? He knows how they work and he can fix them. He doesn't have to work in a factory. He doesn't have to be the engineer who designed the car. Guess what? He still can fix them. He still understands how they work. So your rebuttal is crap.
Yeah, but you're the car washer in that story. You're not the fucking mechanic.
Am
you're
I
the
really?
car washer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the guy that washes the car. You're the guy that works on the actual satellites. That's how I would compare it.
Who knows more about cars? Somebody who washes car, or somebody
a mechanic.
A mechanic, or a flat earther on Hangout.
More. No,
hey Ali, have you ever picked a dish? Have you ever picked a dish and did a dish to line up to a satellite?
What to do with satellites? Talk about you're talking like someone that washes to me. That's it. No, you great knowledge about satellites when I've probably got about the same amount of knowledge, probably more about. You didn't even know how many megabytes or the download-upload speed of these satellites were, Carlos. You didn't know that. Barney had to look it up. I knew it.
Do you know what frequencies are able to penetrate the ionosphere?
Well,
what frequencies does satellite use?
I'm still even installed like dishes for a living. I'm just a trouble shit now and again and drives a lorry for a living. And I knew more about
you're roboting big.
And I knew more about it.
You are roboting.
You know more than me about satellites?
Okay. I said, I knew that much more.
Carlos, he's trolling you. Just
no, I'm not.
Let it go.
And Barney, be quiet. No, I'm not trolling at all. I'm just bringing a bit of reality to Carlos that's not as brainy and as clever as he thinks is, like yourself, Barney. That's all I'm doing. Stop you. Just as long as you guys
keep acting car washer analogy is just a huge fucking troll.
Yeah, I mean, Carlos, it's a nice point. It's a nice point. But you know what? Even somebody who washes cars, they understand the chassis of the car. They understand about the paint, about the finish, about the wheels,
the windows.
Much more than somebody with an armchair
but not the
who has an opinion about internal combustion.
All right then, Carlos. Explain to me then, Carlos. Okay, we'll stretch our knowledge a bit more. Let's talk about Lagrangian points. Now, they say they've got satellites. How do these satellites maintain that position there? And what are they actually doing up there? You know, are they stationary? Do they orbit? Do they go at 66,000 miles an hour around the sun like the Earth does? You know, these little pocket Lagrange points. What do they actually do up there? And maintain their orbit?
They can use inertial flywheels, or they can use thrusters. They have a certain amount of fuel, and they can position themselves, reposition themselves, line it up. Sometimes they have to move to what's called a graveyard orbit, where they're out of commission. So they will actually move that way, or actually they will actually lower their orbit so they can get drag from the the very light atmosphere all the way to the point where they go to destructive orbit, or I forgot what it's called, orbit decay, to the point where they burn up in the atmosphere. So yeah, they use multiple things. Like I said, they use reaction
Carlos, well
wheels
done, mate.
or thrusters.
Yep, good. Right.
What else you need to know? What else you want to know?
Are they stationary? Right, they stationary, or do they actually orbit within the Lagrangian point?
No Lagrangian points.
They're geosynchronous. Stationary. Hang on. Stationary in relation to what?
Well, to where it is, the area that it's in, that Lagrangian point, along the same speed as the sun. Does it move around? Does it orbit around inside, or does it just hold its position, or what does it actually do?
Look, it depends on the orbit. You have low Earth orbit. You have polar low Earth orbits. You have geosynchronous orbits, and
talk specifically, not low Earth orbit and all that. I'm talking about Lagrangian point. What is the satellite doing up with? Hold a inverted commas stationary position, or is it orbiting within this Lagrangian point, or what?
You're talking about between the Earth and you're talking about between the Earth and the Sun. They're like the two Lagrange points. What about them?
Every two-body system has five Lagrange points.
Yeah. Anyway, it's right. The point is, I'm talking to Carlos. I'm talking to the expert. So what do they actually do there then, Carlos? I'm asking
for a satellite to be stationary in relation to you. It has to be in a geostationary orbit. It has nothing to do with Lagrange points. And a Lagrange and a geostationary orbit is simply where the orbital speed keeps it fixed in relation to the orbiting planet. Right? To the surface of the orbiting planet. You're roboting really hard. I literally can't understand a word you're saying. You're roboting really, really hard.
Okay, can you hear me now?
You're still cutting out a bit, but try to talk a bit slower.
1, 2. Okay, right. So the question that I was asking Carlos was, what do the satellites do up there? Do they orbit within that Lagrangian point? Do they hold position in it? Are they moving? Is that Lagrangian point moving? What's that?
They orbit the Earth.
Right, but they hold a stationary position within that Lagrangian point.
No, that geostationary orbit has nothing to do with Lagrangian points. An object in a Lagrangian point would move across your sky at 15 degrees per hour because the Earth is rotating at 15 degrees per hour. A geostationary orbit is a geostationary. Wait,
geostationary.
We are talking about geostationary.
You're talking about a relevant subject. I'm talking about what's happening in the Lagrangian points. I'm not talking about geostationary. In the Lagrangian point, right?
Okay.
When that satellite is within there, does orbit, it go round in a circle within that Lagrangian point, in that place there, whatever that magical place that it's with. Does it hold its position, not in relation to the Earth, within that, or does it orbit within that? We've already agreed it loses its orbit and stuff, right?
It is holding position in relation to the two-body object. Right?
I think the Earth and the satellite will have a coaxial where both are sharing the axis of the sun, which are both
they will both be orbiting the sun.
Right. So in the distance of the satellite, from the sun, it's to a point where its speed of the orbit will match the same rotation as the orbit of the Earth on the sun, to where it looks stationary to the sun. I mean, sorry, to the Earth.
But the objects at Lagrangian points are not called satellites because satellites are things that orbit.
Like the Epic, I think that it's the Epic. One of the ones I use.
So what would you call them then, Barney?
Yeah.
What would you call them?
Probes.
Okay then. So I will call them probes from now on, even though you knew exactly what the fuck I was talking about. No, it's
Yeah,
fine.
okay, no, you were asking why does the satellite stay fixed, and I was assuming it was...
Giggling away like a little
And
child.
who's giggling
Again.
away? What the fuck? I was assuming that
You
it was a
giggled
continuation of the
again.
conversation that we were having about parabolic dishes being pointed at one point in the sky, and you asking
Correct.
how do they keep a fixed position in the sky, and that has nothing to do with Lagrangian points. That's about
No, I
just
wasn't. I
orbits.
didn't ask that at all. What,
That was the topic of the conversation. You jumped in.
Lagrangian. No, I wasn't.
Ali.
That was all finished, and I went on to talk to Carlos, and Carlos
Well,
is backing you up now. It's pretty weak, probably.
What?
Be
We
honest
didn't
now,
look. We
Carlos.
didn't.
What,
We thought you were referring to a satellite when you went to talking on something orbiting on the Lagrange point.
no,
whatever
see,
else.
I knew that was going to happen. You're such a dishonest. You're dishonest.
What does it matter? Barney
points.
asked you a question, and it was satisfactory.
See, this is that. See, this is the kind of yeah. All good. All good.
I will kick your butt. I'm sick and tired of your stupidity. I can't stand it.
Here's number one.
Now you're going to stick up for these people, John.
First of all, stop.
Okay.
You are roboting this whole time. So first of all, it's hard as hell that you understand what you're saying when you're not roboting. You're roboting. So we don't understand half the stuff you're saying. Second, you didn't like what do you call it? Segue into anything. You just went blank head first into a question, and we were talking about satellites at the time. So to assume that we automatically knew you weren't talking about a satellite doesn't work.
Especially because he called it a satellite.
Mm-hmm. That would be a point too.
We were talking about satellites. You asked a question about satellites, and it turns out you were talking about something completely different. Sorry for the confusion.
I said Lagrangian points.
Okay,
Lagrangian points. Barney, you described. Wait a minute. And you, even before this discussion came up, I used the wrong word. Even when I said satellites and Lagrangian points, Bart and Carlos responded by telling me how they actually lost their orbit and what they used to keep them in. Carlos knew what I was talking about. Barney knew what I was talking about. And now they're pulling me up about that I was using the word after the conversation about that. So this having a go at me for using the wrong word is a joke.
Okay, you're roboting really hard. What is your question? What are you inquiring about?
Questions.
Ali?
Actually answers. And that is it. That's it. You've answered the question. Thank you.
Like literally, go listen to the stream and see what you sound like.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go ahead and touch on the whole 95 to 99% of the communication is done through the underwater sea fiber optic, whatever, underwater cable. And yes, that is the case. 95 to 99% of that is done through that. So what about the other 1% to 5%? Well, think about this. Most stores actually use their primary system for transactions is a satellite system. If you look at a gas station or retail store, you will see those parabolic dishes, and they actually do the transaction to that because it is actually safer since it doesn't have to go through ISP, Internet Service Provider. It's actually going straight to a satellite dish and a satellite, and then down to a head end. So it's a lot more secure, and a lot of times, for example, if you're at a store and it's raining outside, you will notice that a lot of times the point of sale will be either slow or not working, and they will actually switch over to a secondary system, which would be a landline or internet. But anyway, so you have that type of communication. You have, of course, that satellite internet. Satellite TV wouldn't be necessarily, communication because it's not two-way communication. Some people will consider that communication. But if you try to compare the amount of subscribers to satellite TV and satellite internet compared to the overall subscribers of TV service and internet done through fiber optics or coaxial, broadband cable or DSL, then you see that number of overall subscribers to that is greater than what they use on the satellite system. Because most of the times you're going to use satellite because you don't have access to a hardwire connection. Most of the times you are going to go for the hardwire connection, not only because it's faster, but also it's more reliable. So people who, especially here in the South, there's a lot of rural areas, and the only way to get internet service and TV service is through satellite system.
And point of sale services don't require broadband internet. They are sending tiny amounts of data. Like a kilobit connection would suffice. And for those, yes, one single satellite can cover every individual in America having a point of sales device.
Think about how many lines of code you have to send just to a transaction. It's very little. You don't require a lot of bandwidth. So you can split up a 1 gig connection to multiple subscribers.
And those are short bursts. It's not like they're watching YouTube videos over those connections.
Correct.
Right. So, yeah.
And a lot of the satellite internet companies will throttle your bandwidth, especially at peak time, because if you start allowing just an unlimited amount of bandwidth to people, let's say through a peak time, then people are going to start streaming, 4K, whatever, and it's going to overload that bandwidth. So yeah, what you do is you limit. Say, okay, during this time of the day, we're only going to allow about 3 megabytes per second to all our subscribers. And you will notice if you talk to anybody who's had internet to satellite, that after midnight, they actually throttle people back up because there's less demand. And so people are able to do the most downloads and streaming during the night or midnight. So anyway, and all you need is a parabolic dish and a receiver, and you start, finding these satellites and then start moving and see how much your aspect and elevation change. And if you know enough math, you can actually work out the distance and realize that they have to be way further than 30,000 to 50,000 feet in elevation in order to be able to match those angles.
So, those communication satellites are unicast services, right? Most of the satellites are multicast or broadcast. Everything that's to do with satellite television, they don't really need high throughput, right? Because they are receiving one signal and then broadcasting that signal to an entire fucking hemisphere.
Exactly.
Right. They're not communicating with you. They're not handling your data for your television, for your dish. They're just broadcasting it at the globe.
Yeah. In the very beginning, DirecTV would use a landline phone. Whenever you wanted to watch an on-demand event, you would request it. So then the receiver would actually dial to DirecTV headquarters and send your information and with your request, and then you would go to a dedicated channel where you'd be able to access that content. So, and nowadays they actually are able to send some very small burst of data to request things. But anyway, so you had a question, Montero?
I'll ask it in a second. I'm eating something.
What you
Enjoy
eating,
your meal. I'll let him eat.
He's probably eating pizza. It's the international flat earth dish.
Okay, sorry, I'm good now, Carlo. The question I want to ask you is, I want to piggyback on Ali B's question. You told me before that all the dishes are pointed at one satellite in one direction, correct?
I didn't say all of them. I think most of the satellite dishes and let's say in the United States, which is in the northern hemisphere, are pointing towards the south, and most satellite dishes on the southern hemisphere are pointing towards the north. Of course,
Right,
it's going to be
and you said they're pointing at one particular satellite, right? The major satellite.
There are multiple satellites on the equatorial band where those things can orbit. So,
Okay.
in fact, some of the satellite dishes in the beginning, in order to be able to acquire signals from different companies, they will be on a swivel, on a motorized.
Yes, I was just about to ask.
What's it called? Actuator. So your cable box or satellite box, whenever you requested a certain channel, if it needed to go to a different satellite, it would send a power to the motor, and it will swivel until it acquires that signal. So because all the satellites are on an equatorial belt, all you need to have is the pivot from left to right once you get your tilt right. But yeah, there are multiple satellites out there, not just one. But they're in the equatorial band. So
okay, follow-up question.
Yeah.
How many satellites are servicing North America?
Well, we're talking about geosynchronous, or we're talking about because really low Earth orbit ones are
the ones that are for DirecTV, let's say.
DirecTV has they used to use 3 main ones. They used to use the 101 and 98 and 103. So 101 gave them the main programming on standard definition. So that beam was actually spread out throughout the whole United States and Central America. Then they have the other 2 satellites, 103 and 99 or 98, I can't remember. And those actually would have different focus beams depending on the region. So depending on what state you were on, you would get the locals of that area. So if you look at a map of the coverage of those satellites, they actually look like a little cellular a cell network because they have little circles. So DirecTV uses from 3 up to there's something we actually used. We actually leased a satellite, a European satellite, to get some of our programming from overseas. So they can use up to 5 at a time. So,
okay, so max 5 satellites. So you established before with LEB that they can service up to 30,000 customers each, correct?
I didn't say that.
That's what you said.
Oh, wait. Now you're messing up. Wait, now you're messing up 2 different kinds of satellites. You're inquiring about TV broadcast satellites, but what we were talking about was the throughput of the communications satellites.
So how many customers could these satellites? Because I'm pretty sure you guys were referring to these satellites when you said
no.
that they can service 30,000.
TV satellites are broadcast satellites. They can service infinitely many customers.
Yeah, in theory, broadcast satellite for TV service. In theory, they can service as many dishes as we can put on Earth.
As many dishes as you can put on a sphere around it of any size.
Of a sphere, huh? Yeah, right.
Thanks for the super chat, John. You don't have to do that.
Let me
Carlos,
ask this, Montero.
There's a question for you, Carlos.
Go ahead.
Gleam's question is DirecTV fully backed up by cable on the ground?
Oh my gosh. Okay, DirecTV has been purchased by AT&T in the last 2 years, and they actually have merged their TV service from DirecTV to DirecTV Go. You can access DirecTV Go through internet, but to answer the question, the DirecTV satellite service is not connected or backed up with I don't know. I actually don't understand the question, to be honest with you.
I actually understand it. In that merge, they actually do have a DirecTV package that is cable, but that's not DirecTV. It's not the same thing. It's part of
it's provided as a streaming service.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Another fun FYI fun fact about that merge they were also talking about using balloons as mini satellites to help help trace,
Boost
skip
signal.
trace, I guess you would call it. Do you call it skip trace or
I
keep
don't
the
know.
signal?
I think actually AT&T is planning on getting rid of this satellite system because they acquired a TV now, so they have the TV. But I don't know. What were you going with that, Montreal? With the whole 30,000 subscribers.
Well, if that was the case, I was going to say it wouldn't be enough to service all the people. But since you're saying that it's an infinite amount of people, my point is mute.
Well, here's the thing, Montreal. Hang on, let me explain this just in an easy way. For communication, you have to have a two-way communication, so you can receive and send. Now, for TV service, you're only receiving. It would be like me asking, how many people can tune into a radio station, Montreal? How many people?
No, I get what you're saying, but I thought you were saying that before with the 30,000. I misunderstood what you were. Which type of satellite?
That was for the communication satellites, which are used for broadband internet in remote areas. And the statement was that one single satellite can cover about 30,000 5 megabit per second connections at a time. Now, there is no ISP has their full capacity measured by how many clients they have, right? That is to say, if your service provider is giving you 10 megabits per second and it has 1 million customers, that doesn't mean it needs to have 10 million megabits per second throughput. It can have significantly lower throughput because not everybody is constantly online using up the maximum of their bandwidth, right? So the 30,000 is the upper limit of everybody using their internet connection at maximum capacity of 5 megabits per second, 24 hours a day, right? But that's not a real case. So I'm guessing that one satellite can cover about 100,000 households, or depending on their packages, if they're sending out 1 megabyte packages for remote areas. I don't know what they're offering. Like I've just looked up what the throughput on that one satellite is. If they're offering 1 megabits connections, then they can have 400,000 comfortably connections, not connections, clients, and have about 100,000 concurrent connections at any given time.
Okay, I misunderstood. You were talking about two-way satellite communication. My bad.
That's two-way satellite communication. That's unicast. That's literally this satellite is right now communicating with you and only you, and listening to responses from you and only you, and is doing so for each individual customer. Broadcast is literally you have a horn. Like a broadcast antenna, which is just screaming out the signal into the void, and whoever picks up the signal can tune into it and watch the channel.
Understood, agreed. I'd like to make one more comment to GPS, if I may, before I go, because I have to leave. He was talking about time dilation, so we went off and off, so I'd like to directly address that. First of all, time, I don't believe in time. Time is a concept. So a concept cannot affect anything. Now, his question was, wait, let me finish, please, Barney.
Okay, go ahead.
The time dilation that occurs in satellites, let's say on the atomic clock, for example, I believe something else is affecting it. Heat, radiation, cosmic rays, whatever. So I just want to address that point directly.
I'm back. Sorry, what we're talking about now?
Your argument from incredulity is kind of pointless, and the statement of time is just a concept. Well, since it's it's a concept with a dimension which is measurable. If you're saying that the dimension is not measurable or that it's not a dimension, then also stuff like speed, frequency, well, like everything just goes away. There is no such thing as speed. There is no such thing as acceleration.
Sure there is. You press the gas, you go. You don't need time for that.
Yes, you do. How do you measure?
You run, you use your legs, you're running
Yeah.
fast. You don't need time for that. Why is time?
how do
Maybe you need time to measure your speed. But
Yes, you need time to measure your speed. Like,
yeah, so what?
so there is time?
No, time is only in our brains. Time exists only in La La Land. There's no such thing as time. It's a man-made concept.
Well, I agree to an extent because God is the
enough.
beginning and the end, and
Yeah.
the time is only for us.
Everything that humans think about is a human cognitive concept, but I don't think you're going to convince a police officer that stops you for speeding that you're not speeding because no, time is not a thing. I wasn't really going at 100 miles per hour because hours don't exist.
But the thing is, isn't
That's
it
a good
not,
one, Barney, but completely irrelevant.
No, but isn't it not? My settings are all messed up.
So
Hang on.
if units and measurements of time exist, right? If it means something to go at 100 miles per hour in your car, and if it means that something can rotate 60 times per second, or 6,000 rotations per minute, RPMs, right? Those units of time then have a meaning. And we can measure this second and that second and that second, and they should all be the same everywhere. If you measure them by the same means, they should be the same. What general relativity proves is that they're not the same, and the passage of time, the length of your second, literally how fast your clock will tick mechanically, will depend on how fast you're moving relative to me.
Right, relativity, Einstein, La La Land. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't know what
I fully understand that.
I don't know what the statement time does not
Enough
exist
of them.
and time dilation does not exist. How does it relate to that?
Time is a man-made concept. So
Yes.
concept cannot affect anything in reality.
Look,
Can
time
time
itself is
affect
not a
anything?
concept. Maybe the unit, how we used to measure it, might be a man-made concept, but time itself is not.
The distance.
No, that's what
no.
Einstein sold to us.
Montreal.
It's a myth.
Montreal. If you walk from one corner to another corner, time is the past to your present. Stop looking at it as 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. It's past to present. That is time.
Yes. Yes.
Agreed, but it's okay. Here, let me ask you something. Since you brought up Einstein, right? Can you please bend me some space-time? Since this is the fourth dimension according to Einstein.
I'm bending it. I'm bending it right now. I'm bending it right now.
Yeah,
All you need is a mass as a force.
Yeah, and you are bending it as well.
So
the only thing I'm bending is my sandwich here.
Anyway,
Enjoy your sandwich, Montreal.
Thank you, Ali.
And thanks for sharing that link too.
You're most welcome.
if I can just bring this back to where we started with the satellites, right? In Northern Ireland, we have some remote places. And in the UK, we use 2 frequencies for mobile phone communications. My phone is capable of receiving either of those frequencies because I'm on 2 different networks. And when I can't get a signal on my mobile phone, I can still get a signal on GPS. So if satellites aren't real, where are we getting this information from?
From satellites. When you say information, what do you mean by that?
the readings on the GPS.
Oh no! All you're doing is getting your location thanks to the GPS, and if you have any information of the topographical information or roads in a stored memory on your phone, then it's gonna show you your location in relation to those maps or streets. So a lot of times you can actually get your, let's say, for example, Google Maps or Google Maps on your phone. You can say
I'm saying Carlos, I'm not talking about when I'm in somewhere where I'm talking about when I'm in the arse end of nowhere on the side of a hill in Northern Ireland with no telephone, no cellular reception, even though I have access to the both frequencies that we use in the UK, without satellites, I wouldn't be getting anything. That's my point.
So that's coming from the satellite. Yeah. What happens is in the UK they use 3G, 4G, and by the way, we still have GSM as well, and you can still receive GSM. And by the way, you can still receive Edge as well. So there's actually 4 different networks that you can still receive. And when 5G comes in, that'll be 5, right? So there's actually 4 networks you can still use there and then.
Sorry, I'm talking about the actual 2. Right, I'm going back here.
Yeah, hang on. Hang
on.
So hang on. Let me explain. It's an area in which I have probably 15 to 20 years of experience. So just let me explain. So the signals that you get, which are the phone signals, are actually used to get better precision of your GPS signal. Because in smartphones, the GPSs are not sort of military-grade GPSs, okay? They're not bad, but they're not super. So what they actually do is they triangulate around the cell towers to get better precision. But if you've got no cell tower signal, okay, so you've got absolutely no mobile phone signal at all, what they actually use then is, of course, the satellites, because that's what GPS is.
Yes, but that's my point, though. That's my question to Montreal and Ali B. If we don't have satellites and I don't have cellular service of any kind, where else apart from the satellites can I be getting this signal from to give me my location?
Well, I'm not in controversy about satellites, the existence of satellites, because I believe they exist. So I'm not under controversy. So
okay.
Maybe talking to the wrong person. Yeah, I totally accept the existence of satellites, stuff like that. So totally convinced, actually.
In orbits, orbital mechanics too.
Not the way that they're portrayed to orbit the Earth. I've already explained my model. I've actually got a model. I've actually got a model. It was funny. I was listening to a conversation earlier on in Flat Earthers again. I've actually got a model of our kind of place, or my idea of the place that we're living in. But obviously,
so how do satellites stay suspended in your model up in there?
Well, they're floating. They're not suspended. They actually float.
Okay, so what are they floating on?
Well, it could be like rotating magnetic.
Oh, La La Land.
No.
Okay.
See, do you want to hear? Do you want to fucking hear, or don't you? See, this is why I don't, and that's what you do, the childish little nervous laugh. But this is the reason that I don't.
Sorry.
You complain about Flat Earthers not having a model, and when they try to present one to you, all it gets is ridicule after about 5 seconds.
Carry on, my bad.
Already.
I had to get you back. I'm sorry.
It's like, yeah, okay, I'm not going about it. Why? Because I don't like it when other people sort of stretch out the money point, right? Fair enough, I accept your apology. But anyway, moving on. So there's some kind of the medium that the ISS and satellites in, things float in it, right? And I believe that it's like the sun and the moon are in some kind of rotating magnetic field. Now it could be like what do you call it? A liquid gas of some sort that's trapped when what they say space is, but the lower pressure system that exists up there.
Ali, can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah, go for it.
Right. Right, so you accept that the ISS is real and that we have something orbiting around above us, satellites in the ISS.
probes, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Right, so in your model, how far from the surface of the Earth do you think these items are orbiting?
Well, I think that actually there's some, like how they've got the different heights. I believe there's different layers, there's different gradients to this atmosphere, right? And it'll go up in gradients. So you can actually, there's a thing like 100, I think it's 100 miles up or something like that. There's a thing called a parking orbit. And it's a place where like the Challenger used to sit, or they sit with satellites and then they inject them into space, or sometimes they travel up to the ISS or travel a bit further or whatever, and they'll actually get serviced. Sometimes the ISS will service some satellites like the Challenger did as well. Maybe not as much now, but there's strange. So there's layers of atmosphere up there, and it's funny that how they've got like rockets, right? We know they don't go straight up, right? We know for a fact they don't go straight up. They go up at an angle, so that would suggest that they have to go in at a certain angle, and they always say they're injecting themselves into a parking orbit. Now that suggests that they're going into a different medium or another part of the atmosphere. If you're injected, the way that they talk about it, so that suggests to me, and that place does exist, and then they move up and down within that. This is all fact that I believe. When I read NASA about satellites and how rockets work and how they get all that, I believe all that stuff because I'm more interested what space is. I just think they're not telling us what the space is actually.
Right, but how far up do you think the ISS is? Like, do you agree with the stated figure from NASA that that's possible for the ISS?
Yeah, of course, man, because that's not that far up. 250 miles. It's especially when they've now released, even though they say that it's still rarefied, but it doesn't matter. Even though they still they've now come out that the moon is within the Earth's atmosphere, inverted commas, and before everybody starts going on, it's not the atmosphere and all that kind of moany shit. I understand that. I know that. But they use specifically that word. So it is kind of attached. It's part of the gradient that is the Earth's atmosphere. It just doesn't finish and then suddenly turn into this vacuum, which it never does, or it never, apparently, it never has. It just gets lower and lower and lower pressure until, they call it, that annoys me when flat earthers going about, vacuums and stuff like that, the vacuum of space when it's not a vacuum. And I've got any arguments about it. It's a lower pressure system and they can't accept that. They're totally blinded that the ISS is fake, fucking bouncy trampolines and stuff like that, man.
All right, can I just address something in the chat? Truminator. This person speaking isn't an Irish bitch because I'm British and proud of it. So, just because to your ears, you think somebody's got an Irish accent doesn't mean they're Irish.
He's got a Belfast. I think you're a Belfast man. Would I be right in saying that?
Northern Ireland. I'm not. But Belfast. I lived there for a few years. But
all right, okay. You've got almost what shall I say? The Ian Paisley accent. Not as strong, I must admit. A bit diluted, but it just sounds the Reverend Ian Paisley-ish kind of thing.
To somebody originally from Scotland Valley, yes, that would be a fair enough comparison. But no, thankfully, I personally don't think I sound like Ian Paisley.
No, I never said that. I said the certain pronunciation, because all like parts of Ireland, you can tell someone from Dublin, right? They've got a specific accent, and they've got this specific accent or whatever.
The South is full of different accents. It's hilarious.
Yeah, but Belfast has got a kind of I can tell. I've worked with a lot of Irish in the building trade, and you could usually tell. someone was, because you would ask them and you would recognise certain accents. You know, some of them are really nice. It's like from the I like the Donegal. I love that accent. I'm just fascinated. But anyway, that was it. Back to the subject. I don't deny satellites. I'll finish my model with the fact is I believe things float up there. You know, and this and the way that the other thing that I like to get out as well is this a gas pressure next to a lower pressure system. The fact is, for gas to express entropy or whatever, it needs heat, and it's freezing cold up there. So I postulate that the atmosphere is actually held just due to the extreme temperature, which maybe some atoms or whatever that do escape, they maybe get a boost by that the troposphere or that warm place. They might heat up because helium heat expands under heat, but it's also it can cool down under expansion as well. It's quite strange, but the point is it expands with heat as well. So certain gases or whatever might get a boost up there, but tend to I'll come to a point where they lose that the energy to want to move about, their kinetic energy or whatever, just due to the coldness up there, because it is cold. I accept all that. I accept the science all about the atmosphere.
So can you accept the science that says the moon is where it is as well?
No, I think it's a lot closer, but I do accept it's a solid object. I do believe that. Right,
but if we can use triangulation to measure where the ISS is, and you stated that you agree that it's where they say it is, why do you then doubt when they tell you where the moon is and it's being measured by various different people, not just NASA, but independently as well?
Yeah, okay, right, but to triangulate 250 miles is a lot easier, because the thing is, to do a really, really accurate triangulation, you have to have a very, very long baseline, and the longer the better. And anybody will agree with that. You have to have this a straight, flat baseline with no curvature, and it has to be long. And it has to be, listen, it has to be long for accuracy. You couldn't measure, say, 250 miles with a baseline of a meter. You're just asking the error margins involved in that, and it'd be astronomical, man, right? So to try and measure 238,000 miles from, and remember, we haven't even, apparently, if the Earth is a sphere, we haven't got a long enough baseline to really accurately measure that. And bouncing sound waves off the moon and stuff like that, and light and stuff, I don't know, man. I don't know, but I don't think it's the right distance. I don't believe it could be. I could accept that. Maybe it is that far, but it's still within, confined within. I don't believe the stars are billions of light years away. I believe all the planets are local, just really small sizes. Not as big as they say they are. And the stars are like an invisible light, visible light, like the sun. If the sun never if the light from the sun never refracted, you wouldn't see light. Light's invisible. It's only when it refracts, it manifests as light, right?
Right. So you're saying we don't. Your personal opinion is then that we don't understand enough about light.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because if you actually go back, I've read books from like the 1800s. Newton on light, what he thought was corpuscles and stuff like that, when he put it through light through a prism, and then Einstein on the photoelectric process or whatever, he got the Nobel Prize for all that kind of stuff. And it's like, in the end up, and then you look at these pictures, in the end up, anybody that says that they know exactly what light is, science is telling you 1 minute it's a wave, and the next minute it acts like a particle. So therefore, it's this. Right now, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense just to extrapolate and just to say that. Just because some things work like that, it doesn't mean that they've found the cause for it. Science doesn't know what light is. It doesn't even know what water is. It doesn't even know half the shit that water does, the molecular bonding of it. Because their atomic theory about all this energy breaks down when they try to attribute it to water molecules or atoms of water and stuff like that. All breaks down, all our science breaks down when they look at certain elements.
Right.
And that's
So
what tells me. That's what tells me. Sorry, I'll just quickly finish. And that's why I'm skeptical about science, because I actually do read it and I do understand what they're telling me, and it's all double speak, contradictory. Yes, it is. No, it's not. You know, like nobody agrees, man. Not even science. The scientists within certain fields will agree. They're all arguing about trying to get their own theories across. And yet we are given this narrative that it's decided that light's this, gravity's this, and stuff like that. When you go and astronomical, nothing's agreed, man. So why should I accept what the mainstream tells me when scientists are telling me they're not agreeing? Okay, finished.
Right. So until we have a unified theory of everything in science, then you're not willing to accept what we do currently understand.
No, but that's the point. That science or scientists and that, they pretend that they understand, but they don't. And clearly, if you actually look at what they're telling you, it clearly tells you they don't have a clue what they're
There's more
what they're
big light
doing.
is invisible.
What was that? Who was that?
Somebody new that's just dialed into the call.
Yeah, we have a very strange phone number in here.
+1, so that's 001, whenever that is. 001 is the code. Is that American? 001.
One plus is usually Canada or the US.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
Hi, Ali, it's John.
Hi, John, how you doing?
All right. Have you read the current like modern theory of light? Not like what Newton or that had to say.
Which one?
QED.
What, the quantum electrodynamics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've looked into that, yeah.
But what do you think about it?
Well, exactly, it proves to me that they don't know what they're talking about and they're just making shit up.
Well,
they're talking about something that can never be observed, and the thing is with quantum physics and quantum behavior of atoms, you have to believe in atoms.
Well, quantum electrodynamics it's not quantum physics.
No, it's on the same. It's using a quantum, the same idea, the size of particles, or the same energies involved in quantum mechanics.
But the thing is, though, that about QED is that it works really, really well in describing how light behaves. So, you know, if it matches observation, they must be doing something right now.
Yeah, but you can match observation, right? And you can make up equations. And remember also, these are equations. Sometimes observations are not done regarding an event. It could be also an observation of a mathematical equation. As in quantum physics, it's a theory of probabilities, and they've got a model, and they'll have a model for every single possibility, meaning that anything can happen. So every answer is correct.
Well, QED is not like that. I mean, if you want to test whether it works, you say, right, if we do this, then QED should, you know, if it says this will happen given these set of circumstances, then you do it and see if what you predicted will happen has actually happened. And if they match, then that's a positive result, isn't it?
Okay, I'll look just for you, John. I'll actually look into further into that.
Is the
what you're talking about? I was right about the I did pass across it with quantum because I knew what you meant by QED, right? So obviously I'm acquainted with that phrase, but I passed. I like passed over that kind of. So my knowledge is maybe not as deep enough to have an actual proper conversation or argument with you, but I will look it up and look into it further.
Yeah, I mean it's just from what you said earlier. I just feel it wouldn't be correct to say that we don't have a good handle on the nature of light because of. I mean, QED is so accurate that if you measure the width of the United States with it, the error margin would be the size of a human hair. It's really, really, really accurate.
Based on what though, John? Based actually on what? What is the? You're saying it can measure it very, very accurately to what reference?
If you're QED is basically the interaction of light and matter. It's how light behaves under any given circumstance, and it does so very, very successfully. And it was it's the sort of culmination of.
Yeah, but how did it measure the distance? How did it measure? What reference, right? You said, so obviously you making the statement that can measure east to west coast or whatever, they did that experiment. So what did they do?
I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that. But if you measured the width of the United States with the same accuracy of quantum electrodynamics, the margin of error would be the width of a human hair. Just to draw an analogy of how consistently accurate it is. You wouldn't use QED to measure the width of the United States, but if you know what I mean, just to kind of put it into context, that it's not. It doesn't give you a ballpark answer. It gives you a really, really precise answer about how light behaves. So
right, does it explain light refraction and all that? Does it bring that in, refraction, reflection, all that kind of stuff into it? Or
it's pretty much the entire modern understanding of how light behaves and how light refracts everything.
So that's what we should be looking at, really. So that's the right, ballers. From now on, we have to study QED, quantum electrodynamics, and then we can have a proper discussion, because obviously we've been discussing the wrong kind of science regarding light refraction and things disappearing from the bottom up.
I mean,
I think that's a good one. Thanks, John. I'll look at that.
The importance of it can't be underestimated. Actually,
no, I agree with you.
I mean, it's the foundation of chemistry and therefore of biology. It kind of reaches into everything.
That's quite funny, because you talking about that. That's quite funny because like the astronomers or these theoretical astrophysicists, they actually stole all the shit from the chemists, and now they actually slag them off because of their elemental, the table elements and stuff like that. They actually stole all their equations and their images that they use to talk about electricity moving between neurons and how chemicals reacted under certain, things like that. So yeah, good point there, actually. Yeah, funny how you mentioned the chemistry stuff. Yeah, most people don't know that.
Yeah, I mean, apart from it reaches into everything apart from radioactivity, and it can't. There's not a. There's still a problem with trying to match things together with general relativity, but it really is the basis of everything, and it's not. It can't be underestimated how important it is and how accurately the modern understanding of it works. It would be in my opinion, wrong to suggest that we don't understand the nature of light. I would be extremely surprised. People have said this before and been wrong, but I'd be extremely surprised if there were any surprises left for us when it comes to just the nature of light itself.
Well, I'll look into that. I'll look at. You've given me high expectations, John, and I just hope. I even know that I'm going to find. I'm and this will probably because I'll be called biased, but going on previous experience reading, all this the science is in kind of stuff, I've basically found that the science is not in, and found loads of questions, even more questions when I've looked. But I'll remain open-minded. I'll remain open-minded about it, but I'm not optimistic, really.
I'll have to warn you, it is a bit of a head. Well, I wouldn't swear.
I don't understand English as long as it speaks English. It's written in English, and it describes what the equations do and the values of the letters. I can understand it. I can quite easily. I might not be able to do the equations just because it would take a lot of time finding out the values of certain things and stuff like that, and it'd be a lot of headache for something I couldn't really be bothered. But I can understand when they tell you this equation describes this, and A's this value, this symbol's that value, omega's this value, blah 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 blah, and this value is a tens or whatever, all that kind of stuff. It describes it in English, so it tells you what the equation. You don't really need to do the equation to understand what the equation is describing, because it tells you plainly.
Yeah, well, the Richard Feynman book QED is not. It's not like a mathematical textbook.
Oh, I watched his lectures. I didn't know about it then. I watched his lectures on the YouTube, but that was years ago.
Yeah, well,
I knew I'd heard of it. That's the only reason I knew about that, John, is because I have watched the lectures. But that was many years ago. I'm going to watch them again. And he was talking.
He won the Nobel Prize in 1965 for QED.
Diagrams. That's right. That's it. Now I remember.
Diagrams.
Yeah, that's right. And he imagined he described the. What was it? The probability. No, maybe that's another one he was talking about, where he drew the clock face and it spins round and it stops there, and then there's another. I think
that's part of QED.
Oh, that is right. There you go. That's it. Yeah. I watched the lectures, but I watched them again actually because, I should go back and watch them. Yeah, I watched all the lectures, man.
He was a very, very talented science communicator. But
listen, here's a good one. Here's a classic about the hubris of these guys, right? And I do like Richard Feynman.
Ali, I hate to interrupt. But it would be rude of me to leave without saying goodbye to everybody. So good night, gentlemen. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks a lot, Sean G. And thank you, Ali B, for writing.
Yeah, John, back about that, the quantum. Yeah, that's right. And that was, this is the thing, that was one of the things that, because as I say, I looked into this years ago, before the Flat Earth came along, actually. I watched all Feynman's lectures, but here's a great example of kind of his hubris. But I've got a wee conspiracy theory about Richard Feynman, by the way, I believe that he was actually done away with, but that's another story. But the point is that if you type into YouTube Richard Feynman explaining magnetism, right? And there's this interview, it was like an interview with this English guy that was just asking questions. And I found it fascinating, his reaction to being asked what was magnetism. Now, if you don't agree that Richard Feynman done everything to avoid actually answering that question. It was fascinating anyway, and even for a guy of that mind. And that's why the rumpus runs away from magnetism. If a tip for anybody, if you want to get rumpus by or defeat rumpus, go for his weakest spot, which is magnetism. He hasn't got a clue about it. And he hates getting into discussions. He avoids discussions about it. But anyway, that's just a little side one, a funny one for.
One thing about Feynman was that he was quite he did have quite a big ego, but he liked to instead of dryly kind of explaining scientific concepts, he would describe them in a really rich way, and it often seemed like he was skirting around the question. But I think he just really enjoyed. It's almost it's not like he was being cryptic, but he was trying to avoid actually using any scientific terms a lot of the time.
Yeah, but go and listen to that. Listen to honestly, John. But go on. I'm not taking it for that because actually, do you know what? I actually liked the guy. He was an out there kind of dude, and he done loads of drugs and stuff like that. Plus, he played the bongos and sang in a band. Not very well, man. Not very well. But that's a band.
One of my favourite videos that he did was just explaining what fire is. It's like Feynman explains, and he talks about what happens when you burn something, and it's a delight to watch, actually. I have to say.
Yeah, but it's like it's like the grammar that they use. That I mean, I have to say, he was a great communicator, and he knew, he was a natural communicator. The way that he talked, and people enjoyed listening to him, and the way that he described it. You could tell he had a passion about, and he did believe. A great interview was when he was at the Los Alamos, when he got interviewed and talked about the when he was actually seen the atomic tests, and he was like, he says I couldn't resist. I took my glasses off to look at this.
I'm gonna go ahead and end the panel. Did you guys want to go ahead and do a last call real quick before, and then you guys can continue after that? I still want to I was gonna wind down about 10 minutes ago, and I kept it going, but
no, thanks, Sean.
Ali, you want to go ahead and start it off?
Yeah, I'll just say, keep inquiring, keep an open mind. Don't listen to anything I say because I talk shit most of the time. Okay, thank you, Sean. By the way, thanks, Sean. Shout out Jose also for doing this, letting people come on and having a bash at it. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, I will choose. Let's go with them and they.
Thanks for the show, Sean. It's been enjoyable. All I would say is most of the in-depth scientific stuff goes over my head, and if Flat Earth could get away from some of their contradictions with what they propose is going on, then it may stand a better chance. But because of all those contradictions, I just find it very hard to believe.
All right. Thank you, sir. John, you're up.
Yeah, just to very quickly follow on from what Ali was talking about, Feynman took off his glasses to watch the nuclear test because he realised that it was just ultraviolet light, and he could just look through his car windscreen at it instead of wearing the glasses, which was quite a bold thing to do. But it didn't blind him anyway. But I just wanted to finish with a quote from Feynman, which is in relation to how far-reaching the theory of quantum electrodynamics is. And that is, nature uses only the longest threads to weave her patterns, so that each small piece of her fabric reveals the organization of the entire tapestry. That's all I've got.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Jose Flip Flap. You may be at work. I don't want to call you by name, but I know who you are. So, Toy Soldier, did you want to go?
Yeah, you can call me Brian. I just forgot to switch over.
All right.
Yeah, I'm at work, so I haven't had a chance to really say much. Good show.
Thank you, sir. I think that is it. Unless Jose comes up. Oh, what did I just lost a damn screen. Hang on. Multiple screens. Where's everything? Oh no, lost it. Hang on. All right, here we go. Found it. All right, so go ahead and end this. I do appreciate you guys being on. Kind of flip-flopping around. Let me see. Okay, in that. All right, here we go. Yeah, my screens just went off flip-floppy, so got a little confused. But I had some questions in the chat that I will go ahead and answer real quick because I hate typing it, and that's the way it is. Dave is in there. Dave, what's her name? Dave R and Q. Dave Adqua, whatever. He had asked me, he was asking us a few questions, and he had asked me a question in chat about space. At first, he had asked me, where I thought the Kármán line would be, and I think it's about, what, 55, 60 miles. Then he asked me if the atmosphere is rotating with Earth. I told him yes. That is my answer, so you know, yes. And then Wolfgang actually started asking some questions that I thought were pretty cool and made me think a little. But nonetheless, he asked me if space, or maybe Dave asked me. Either way, one of them asked me if space rotates with the Earth, and as far as I would know, no, it doesn't. And then Wolfgang asked me, does the universe rotate as we do? And here's the kicker to that, where we can measure parallax to know that the globe is rotating in our position on the globe. It would be impossible. There would be no reference at all for us to know if the universe is rotating, and that's as far as that would ever go. There's no way of finding out. Someone in the chat, I think it was True Blue, asked me to also speak on the seasonal stars patterns. Yeah, because of where the sun is located in our observations at night, we see completely different star systems throughout the years. And those star systems that we are able to see throughout the year, they don't sit in the same spot. So it can't work on flat Earth. We're talking space, the sun, the moon, all these other things that don't matter. The sun and the moon, the second we see them rise and set, we know we live on a globe. See you guys tomorrow. It's gonna be, or actually I may be on a little bit later on. I'll definitely be around. Head over to my Discord. The link's in the description. I'm probably gonna be hanging out there a lot more today, and also in the voice chat. I'm gonna start doing that a little bit more and see how that goes. So I do thank everyone that was on the panel. It was interesting. Thank Montreal for bringing in the topic of strata balloons. I still owe you guys a climate change / geoengineering stream that will be coming soon. So don't think I forgot. But yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. I do appreciate everyone that was here. It was a fun one. Let me see. Yeah, I got some other things going on with the stream wise. It's gonna be I'm trying to work on right now, trying to get set up. So it's work in progress. I was telling some people in the chat I uploaded another 150 backgrounds, so get ready to start seeing a bunch of new ones of those. But other than that, guys, I'm done rambling. I gotta get out of here, and thank you for being here. Love y'all. Peace.